EA is now on Twitch. Join us Wednesday nights when Alistair reads a bedtime story, and Sunday mornings for a few hours of chill casual gaming, plus interviews, special guests, pickup streams, and more. Visit twitch.tv/EA Podcasts and follow us to be notified when we go live, plus access VODs of past broadcasts.
Escape Pod, Episode 975. Flashback Friday. Don Ysidro. By Bruce Holland Rogers.
Hello everyone, welcome to Escape Pod, the weekly science fiction podcast. I'm Alistair, your host for this week, and this week's story comes to us from Bruce Holland Rogers and was originally published on the 6th of October 2005. This seems like a very good time to mention that this is Escape Pod's 20th birthday. Our narrator for this story the first time through, and now, was the amazing Evo Terra, and we'll get into Bruce and Evo's backgrounds in a moment. I also want to shout out Sarah Ely, our founder, whose host spot on this episode was a delight and helped immensely in the construction of mine. I also want to talk briefly about content warnings. This is a story that deals with a very matter-of-fact description of the careful dismembering of a dead body, the logistics of mortality and pottery. My host spot, for reasons which will become very apparent when you get into it, deals directly with recent familial bereavement, and also how difficult it is interacting with media about recent familial bereavement if you've experienced it. If you have, and you don't feel like you can deal with this, I know exactly where you're coming from. Step away, choose joy, have a cookie, go get a cup of coffee, anything like that. Or, better still, listen to the story, because the story itself is not really about that, and then just step away once it's done. I won't be offended. I am where you are. We take our peace where we can get it, right? In the meantime, Bruce Holland Rogers. Bruce is an American author of short fiction who also writes under the pseudonym Hanovi Braddock. His stories have won a Pushcart, 2 Nebula Awards, the Bram Stoker Award, 2 World Fantasy Awards, the Micro Award, and have been nominated for the Edgar Allan Poe and Spain's Premio Ignotus, and you should hear how badly I murdered the pronunciation on that the first time through. He is a member of the Wordos Writers Group and was a member of the fiction faculty at the MFA program in creative writing of the Northwest Institute of Literary Arts. He has taught fiction writing seminars in Denmark, Greece, Finland, and Portugal. Our narrator for this episode is close friend of the show, and indeed, podcasting in general, Mr. Evo Terra, a podcast Hall of Famer alongside our own Mur. Evo is an American podcaster, author, radio broadcaster, and businessman. He's also the author of Podcasting for Dummies, originator of The Beer Diet, a travel blogger, and an early pioneer in podcasting. His most recent projects are The End, a rolling directory of completed audio drama podcasts for people who want to binge listen complete stories, and the Fiction Podcast Preservation Project. We asked Evo about this, and this is what he said. Our mission is simple, to save previously published fiction podcasts from vanishing from the internet. At the beginning of podcasting, there were fiction podcasts freely available to the public, but keeping finished fiction podcasts live is not free for the creators, and they're only willing to stroke annual payments of over $100 annually for so long. And when they stop paying the hosting bills, their shows vanish, and we all lose out. The FPPP is designed to do something about that, and it is the most laudable of projects. It, along with The End, another typically Evo, typically laudable project, will be linked in the show notes. So, get ready to say goodbye. And hello, because it's story time.
Don Ysidro by Bruce Holland Rogers. On that last morning, anyone who came to visit me could see that I was dying. I knew it myself. As if I had cotton in my ears, I heard the voice of Don Leandro saying to my wife, "Donna Susanna, I think it is time to fetch the priest." And I thought, yes, it is time. We don't have our own priest, or even our own church, so someone has to drive in a pickup truck to get the priest from El Puente Seto. But don't be fooled by what you may hear in Malpasa or in Palapan de Baranda. Here we remain Catholic. Yes, we make pots in the old way. That is why tourists come here. And it's true, as is sometimes whispered, that we have restored certain other practices from the past. But not as they were done back then. Those were bloody and terrible times. The times of the Mexica. They say that the sacrificial blood covered the sun pyramids from top to bottom. Thank the Virgin, we don't do anything like that. A little time after the priest came and went, I died. Word spread. People came to our house. The family asked first for things of mine that they wanted. Then the other neighbors. Don Francisco stood near my body and said, Don Ysidro, may I have your shovel? I need one, and your sons-in-law can dig new clay for Susanna. I said, take it with my blessing. Susanna said, he says for you to take it. Next was Donna Eustacia. She asked for one of my ceguetas for scraping pots. I said, of course, go with my blessing. And Susanna said, he says for you to take it. When Don Tomas came, he asked for my boots, the ones of red leather with the roosters in the stitching. I said, Tomas, you thieving rascal! I know very well that you took 2 of my chickens that night 7 years ago to feed to your whore from Puebla. And here you come asking not for a cegueta or some wire, but for my good boots. And Susanna said, he says for you to take them. Because, of course, she could not hear me. In any case, I would have let Tomas have the boots. I only wanted to see him blush one more time. They came and asked for everything that Susanna would not need. They asked even for things which it was not necessary to ask. They asked for things I had already promised them. They even asked for permission to dig white clay from the place where I liked to find it. They asked, and I said, yes, with my blessings. We are nothing, if not polite. Last of all, they asked for a few of my hairs to make brushes for painting pots. They cut what locks there were with scissors. They asked for my hands and cut them off with a knife for butchering goats. They said, Don Ysidro, we want your face. I agreed, and they flayed off the skin very carefully and tenderly. They put my hands in a metal drum and burned them. They dried my face in the sun. Meanwhile, they wrapped the rest of my body in a shroud and buried it in the churchyard according to the customs of the church. For a time after that, I was in an emptiness, a nowhere place. I did not see. I didn't hear. I couldn't speak. I wasn't anywhere, not in my house, not in the coffin in the ground. Nowhere. But that would change. All my life I had taught the other people of my village to make pots as I made them. That was nothing special. We all did this. I made my own Don Ysidro pots, except when Donna Isabella showed me how to make her tiny little ones, or Don Marcos demonstrated how he painted his. Then, for a while, I would make tiny pots just like Donna Isabella, or pots painted in the style of Don Marcos. When Donna Genifera had gone to the capital to see the birds and the animals on ancient pots, she imitated those decorations, showed us, and soon we all knew how to do it. The rest of the time, I made pots in my own manner, though sometimes with a little touch of Isabella or Marcos or Genifera that I had learned from them and made my own. Now, for the week after I had died, everyone in the village would be making pots as I had made them. Even the children, if they were old enough to make pots of their own. They dug the white clay from my favorite place, soaked it, filtered it, let it settle, and poured off the clear water from the slurry. When the clay was dry enough, they mixed in the ashes of my hands. Then they made clay tortillas and pressed them into big plaster molds for the base, just like the ones I used. Sometimes they used my very own molds. They made snakes of clay, attached them to the bases, wound them around from the bottom up. My pots didn't have necks, neither did these. The people, my family, and all the rest in the town, scraped these pots smooth, rubbed them to a shine, and painted them with black paint, using brushes of my own hair in the designs I would have used. lizards and rabbits with checkered backs, or else just checkers that started bigger on the middle of the pot and became intricate at the lip. Those were the pots in the Don Ysidro style. They fired them. The ones that they fired didn't break, they brought to my house. Susanna put pots all around the front room and even in the bed where I had lain. But I didn't see this. I only knew it was happening. These pots in my house sat undisturbed. The people burned the brushes made from my hair. On the third day, there was a feast at my house. Probably there were all kinds of tamales, some with olives and meat, some with seeds and beans. Men and women drank pulque, and there was perhaps melon water for the children. The sun went down, candles were lit, a fire burned in my fireplace. At midnight, Don Leandro opened a box and took out the mask made of my own skin. He put my face over his face, and I opened our eyes. I came from the place that was nowhere. I was in the room. I looked at the faces, at the wide eyes of the living, Susanna holding her hand over her mouth. I saw my grandchildren, Carlos and Halea, Ana and Quinito, and for the first time, I could see the pots in the living room. They glowed in the candlelight. Together, Don Leandro and I went into the bedroom and saw the pots there on the bed. We returned to the living room, and I said with our mouth, "I see that I am not dead after all." No, Don Ysidro, they assured me. "You are not dead." I laughed. That is what you feel like doing when you see that you aren't dead. Then Don Leandro threw the mask into the fire. I wasn't in the mask anymore. I was in the pots. In all those round pots made by the hands of my friends, my rivals, my family, my neighbors. I was there in each one. The people took me away from my house, pot by pot, and I entered their houses with them. In my former home, they left only the pot that Susanna had made in my style. From that night forward, I was all over the village. People stored corn in me, or rice, or beans. They used me to carry water. And I spread out from there, for if tourists came to buy pots and happened to admire me, the potter would say, "Oh, that's Don Ysidro." And the tourist would nod and perhaps buy the pot that he thought was merely made by Don Ysidro. I am still in my little village, but I am in Stockholm too, and Seattle, and in Toronto and Buenos Aires. Some of me is in Mexico, the capital, though I am mostly still at home here in the village where I grew up, grew old, and died. I sit on Susanna's shelf where I can watch her make ordinary tortillas for her breakfast, or clay tortillas for her pots. She is old, but her hands are still quick as birds. Sometimes she knows that I am watching her, and she looks over her shoulder and laughs. Whether she can hear it or not, my answering laughter is deep and full and round, like a great big pot, in the manner of Don Ysidro.
My mum died after an extended illness in the middle of 2024. One of the very kind things that Margaret did for me across those horrifying months was to ask our shows to remove me from any stories dealing with grief or familial loss. By this time, listening to this episode, you are probably wondering why I'm here. Allow me to explain. I played myself. I wanted to do a flashback of an episode I've never heard before, because that's always a different kind of fun to playing the hits. I wanted to do a flashback about a flash piece, because, much as comedy and horror are needlessly maligned genres, flash is a maligned format. So, I rolled the dice, and I got death. Except, it turns out, I played myself in the absolute best of ways. What Rogers and Evo's lovely, sparky narration communicate is that this is part of a process. They even managed to do this in a remarkably non-denominationally specific manner. There are other places when we die. We go to different ones, and sometimes we come back. Whether or not that return is horror depends on how many capital letters you get on "Sometimes We Come Back," and whether they have the words Stephen King's on the front. But as Sarah says about a related issue in the opening to the original broadcast, a lot of what people find important about the difference is an illusion. There are so many things, especially from 2024, that sentence can apply to. Here, I apply it to life and death and personal recent experience. Don Ysidro is still functioning when his body dies. He is arguably more alive than he was before, as he travels the world encoded into his own art. And that is such a beautiful idea, it's making me smile a solid week after I wrote this host spot. So much of last year, for all sorts of reasons, even without losing Mum, was awful. I left the year feeling like I should feel alienated and isolated from the very community structures we are all told to aspire to. To my amazement, I'm neither. At least most of the time. I am calmer and more confident in myself than I've been for a very, very long time, and all of that has come from letting go. Letting go of the twin-edged terror of waiting for my mum to die. Letting go of numerous perceived or actual professional slights. Letting go of the certainty of my neurotypicality. All of it boiling down to more space in my head and joy in some very surprising places. Making pies with the rolling pin my mum used my whole life. Cooking breakfast eggs in the pan she bought not because she needed it, but because she liked it and she thought it was pretty. And it is. Watching a movie I know she would have loved and imagining her hooting with laughter at the same deeply inappropriate sections that we did. Don Ysidro's art was his pots and his community. My mum's art was her sense of humour, her love of her family, and a pretty serious rolling pin. All of them are still in the world. So yeah, I played myself. But I won. And I hope you did too. On to the subject of subscribing and support. Escape Pod is funded by you, our listeners, and we are now formally a non-profit. That's formally as in bow tie, not formally as in we used to be. We are now a non-profit. One-time donations are gratefully received and much appreciated, but what really makes a difference is subscribing. A $5 monthly donation gives us more than just money. It gives us stability, reliability, dependability, and a well-maintained atmosphere processor. And who doesn't enjoy breathing? If you can, please go to escapepod.org and sign up to subscribe. If you have any questions about how to support EA and ways to give, please reach out to us at donations@escapeartists.net. If you can't afford to support us financially, then please consider leaving reviews of our episodes or generally talking about them on whichever form of social media you can't stay away from this week. Every single one of our shows is now on Blue Sky, and it's so lovely. Do please come across and say hi. If you like merch, you can also support us by buying hoodies, t-shirts, and other bits and pieces from the Escape Artists Void merch store. The link is in various places, including our pinned tweet and the show notes, which will also include some fun jumping off points for you based on this episode, the bios of everyone involved in the production of it, and links to Jordan Shively of Void Merch's debut novel, which is out now. Escape Pod is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Download and listen to the episode on any device you like, but don't change it or sell it. Theme music is by permission of Anders Manga. Join us next week for the first part of Reflected in Mirrored Skies, a novelette by Deborah L. DeWitt, narrated by Iba Omankas. Mer will be your host, Summer will be your audio producer, and we will see you then. Our closing quote this week is from Australian rapper Draft. Australian rap is awesome, and Draft is one of the most joyous and emotionally open and very funny of a flotilla of acts. This quote is from a song called Sing It, Life of Riley, and I will insult neither your ears or Draft himself by attempting to rap it. See, it all started with my dad. If he rated anything, I always hated it. Yeah, with one catch, the beauty of life. He played Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. We live in what we love. Our legacy is our art, and our art is what we love. Be immortal well. my friends, and we will see you next week. Until then, have fun.